Well, welcome back to Keep Calm with Pete, and literally the whole point of the show. Uh, Part two: making two-wire systems useful. Now, obviously, you can go with your two-wire system and plug it all together and have a bunch of LPACs, but we're going to talk about master stations, dial-up, and 2 to 4 wire hybrids. What is 2 to 4 wire? I don't understand. So again, I have my mentor friend Bob Tourkow on with me, and Bob and I did Comm together for years. In the beginning, we both were working for Larry Estrin, and we were doing Super Bowls, dozens of them, and the Comm was before the Super Bowl in Salt Lake City. It was all RTS 2 wire everywhere. There was no such thing as digital. We didn't have digital. Digital did exist, but we didn't actually have it. I had the number 3 Clear-Com digital Matrix Plus that I used in Brazil on the Olympics. But when we were doing the shows with Larry, we pretty much were interfacing with trucks and doing that kind of stuff. So what we're going to be talking about today is the 2-wire half of it, which is typically what you will find in every TV truck in the United States. There's only 1 or 2 that don't use 2-wire in the truck, and they're usually combined with an Atom digital system. But the key to it, to running out all the bell packs and all the cameras and all that sort of stuff, is always ends up being 2-wire. Bob, by the way, is on virtually the other side of the earth. He's in England, and I'm obviously on the other side of the pond from where he is. But years ago, he started doing other work and moved to England. And we in the intercom industry were very saddened to see him leave our technical work. And I've often said to him, Bob, come on back to Comm, come back to Comm. But no such luck. Well, so it just leaves more Comm for me. What can I say?
Pete, I've got a teeny story that I don't think I've ever told you. Unlike Pete, I've actually worked as an employee of Clear-Com and RTS. In fact, I was an employee of Clear-Com's for 15 years. But when I wanted to move over here, because I had met a woman, fell in love with her, and Clear-Com did have an office here, but they didn't want to lose me in San Francisco. And they said, no, you can't. You cannot move to England. It just won't work for us. You have to be here. And I said to them, well, I'm going to move to England because that's where the woman I love is. And if you stop and think about it, and Matrix Plus was very big at this time, I said, let's see, who is over in England? And at that point, it was, like Drake and well, in Germany, Rito and what have you. I said, what is the chances if I leave Clear-Com and move to England? What are the chances you think one of them will want to hire me? Slight pause from Bob Cohen. Okay, let's talk about how you can do your job from over in England. Yeah.
Well, I unfortunately it didn't come to fruition as much as I would have wished, because then we would have continued to work on shows together. Now down to the show. I did put in some handouts in the handout section. I put in the handbook of intercom engineering again, like before. Put in a couple of manuals for the PS31 power supply, the source assign panel, or SAP 1626, and the SAP 612, which is a 6-channel unit. And then I put in an 803 user manual, which is the non-digital master station. The handbook of systems engineering is I think unique because it goes all the way from beginnings of 2-wire all the way up to matrix systems. So pretty much it covers everything. And if you want to learn anything about comms, this is a terrific place to start. And the link to download it is right there, but I put a copy of it in the handouts, which I pulled from the link there. This is the dial-up system I built for Wireless First. We actually built two, and it was a rack, and I'll go down through the rack what was in it. The RTS 862, which is a nondescript box with no buttons or controls on it. But what it does is it takes the two-wire audio, and much like an audio only box, balances each channel and with a transformer and puts it out on a 25 pair telco cable, which is the way that the master stations interface. So this is the master station right below it. Right above it there's a Wohler thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know the experience of all of your people who are listening, but it just occurs to me, you said, here's the dial-up box. And I'm not sure, have you actually sufficiently indicated, well, what the heck does dial-up mean?
Well, unfortunately, if I told them what a dial-up was, I'd have to kill them, because then I wouldn't have a job. But yeah, I'm going to tell them. We're going to get to it. I have a detailed instructions of what a dial-up is, and I will tell you my misgivings about the dial-up, which made it so hard for me to understand in the beginning. So right below it here, there is a dial-up. This one with all these black boxes are the dial-up, and then below that is a patch bay, which allows me to interconnect all of the system. And it's a very unique patch bay in that the normals on the patch bay, the automatic connections from one row to the other row, the next row, which are automatically connected. And then if I want to plug in a plug, it disconnects them. The normals also include the normals on the ground. So it's the ground, the tip, and the ring are all normal through there. If that may be a little more information than you need to have, but for comms, it's very important because the ground is extremely important in the transmission of the audio, because it's the ground and a pin has the audio on it. It's unbalanced. Right below that are two Aphex 120 DAs, audio DAs, which allow us to bring in some audio and distribute it with separate volume controls. And below that, this gray area is a 2 to 4 wire converter, Clear-Com CCI 22s, which have two hybrids in each one. And we'll go into that and I'll tell you what a hybrid is. Below that is a panel I made to interface into the CCI 22s. And on the bottom of the rack are a bunch of XLRs, male and female XLRs, which go to the patch bay for universal interconnect. This is a close-up of the power supply of the master station, RTS 803. Now, Bob was involved in the design of the RTS 802, which is very similar to this, except it had on the left-hand side, had a 15-inch pull-out drawer, which when you pulled it out, had all kinds of switches and knobs and dials and pots, and you could hide your stash in there and everything right in there, and you stick the drawer in. And this is the updated version of it, which allows all of that functionality, which was controlled in the drawer, to be actually controlled through programming. This little button right here says call and setup. You hold it down, and all of these buttons here start flashing. And then according to the little labels along the top here, you select which one, which indicates the function you want to program, and press that button. Now, for instance, you could do things like make buttons momentary or not momentary, or make buttons totally inoperable, disconnect them, whatever, lots of different things. So the only other thing I'm going to say about this particular thing is on the back of the 802 are these two little volume controls, HM and PM. And those are the headset and the panel mic volume controls. So if you have to adjust the gain of this whoever is on this panel, unlike modern digital systems where you just sit in your computer backstage and change the gain of the director's mic, this you have to go crawl under the director's table and change the gain right here. And some directors get a little nervous when you're doing that, but you just have to do it. One way to help you adjust this gain is a box made by Studio Technologies. And this box is basically an audio only box. You put in the intercom on the right hand side of the box here, and that is a loop through box. So it's you can plug it in either one, you get the same thing. And that will separate it using two transformers, pin 2 and pin 3, or channel A and channel B if you're talking RTS. And those two channels have meters on them here. So now you can meter the actual audio. And a unique thing about RTS belt packs and Clear-Com, the original Clear-Com belt pack, is that there is no audio volume control for the mic. It's one thing. It's set and forget. You can't control it, can't make it louder, can't make it softer. And so your entire intercom system has to be built around that gain. So for instance, the gain of the master station I was talking about before, these down here are directly related to the gain of the belt packs out in the field. So when somebody's talking on a belt pack out in the field, and then the director talks, I want to make the director's mic the same loudness to everybody as a person talking out in the field. So I have to match the director's mic to the gain of the BP325 belt packs out in the field. And this little box helps you do that. Now, when I do shows with a digital system, I have an old-fashioned DBX Model 81W meter, which is an analog meter, which I plug into my master station, and I'm able to meter every channel and able to control the volumes. So I often think of myself as I mix comms. I'm the comms mixer. I'm the front of house comms mixer, sort of. Mac did a lot of shows for the Clinton Global Initiative, where he ran the entire intercom system through his console. So he could go to a certain layer on his console and just control the levels of everybody talking, rather than having to deal with the matrix. So it's basically the same thing, mixing. And that is so important. I think you will get more compliments on a comm job if the people say, you know, the levels are always just great. They're always amazing. When I'm in rehearsal, they sound great. When I'm in the show and I'm whispering backstage, they're still great, because what I've done is I've turned the volume up. So it's important to do that. And you will get more compliments about that than any other function in the comms business. This power supply we talked about before, the PS31, I think it's called the PS31 because originally it had enough power to power 31 RTS belt packs, but the newer belt packs are need much less power, so it can do more than that. But on the back of this, I wanted to point out it has these 4-pin connectors, and each of these 4-pin connectors, one of them puts out channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, and ground, plus the DC that's on top of those three, and the other one of the other ones does the same thing but without the DC. So you have an option of dry or wet. Wet meaning it has DC on it. So doing that, we put a bunch of them in one rack. So here we have 5 units doing channels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and a spare, because the usual failure of an RTS power supply is you get a little bit of hum. And the hum is usually caused by the fact that a humongous capacitor inside the unit has gotten its connections a little bit loosened. And it's a whole big deal taking the whole thing apart and getting inside and soldering the connections or tightening them up, and then the hum goes away. But that's always a good reason to have an extra power supply. This is the patch bay that's built into it. And here you have, again, this mysterious SAP or source assigned panel, which I haven't explained what it does yet. It has 20 outputs right here, plus 2 outputs from the audio DA, and they are normaled into a multi, a cable that has 12 channels on it. So here, the first 10 and 2 channels of the audio DA are normaled or normally connected to these 12 channels of a multi. Now, if I go back to the drawing of the dial-up here, on the back of the dial-up, there are 4 multis on here, 4 12-channel multis. So I usually would run one to stage left, one to stage right, one up center, and maybe one out in the house, maybe one at front of house. So I'd have 12 channels of comm all over the house, and I could put in belt packs and plug them in anywhere I wanted to. So there was my 15 channels. Now also on this patch bay were here XLR adapters, 15 XLR adapters available at the bottom of the rack, but they're normaled into the first 6 channels of the dial-up, the SAP, normaled into a TW12, which we're going to talk about. It is a special interface which every 2-wire system should have 1 or 2 in. And then an audio-only box and the rest of the outputs of the AFEX 120A audio DA. And then down in the bottom is the output of your power supplies, the feeding the inputs to the SAP, the source assigned panel, the inputs to your CCI 22s, which convert from wet 2-wire intercom into dry 4-wire intercom, and then the balance lines which feed your master station, which is in this particular system, the RTS 803. So this is a little too hard to see, but it's in the deck, and the deck will be available. And this sort of shows a little more detail of how that patch bay is actually wired. I'm not going to go into it here because it's hard to see. The hybrids that are built in the bottom, which in that picture of the rack before you saw were dark gray, 2 hybrids in each pull-in rack thing. I brought them out to connectors on the bottom right below it. And the hybrids are sort of universal. They'll work for Clear-Com, they'll work for RTS, they'll work for RTS on channel 1, channel 2, but you have to wire the back of the hybrid in a certain way to make that work. So I brought out all the wiring conventions to little switches so I could switch it between Clear-Com and RTS, which is mostly just a level adjustment. And then when you're in RTS, you can either pick channel 1 or channel 2 to go on there. And all of this stuff was essentially to make 4 wires that could then go into a digital intercom system. Also, as part of this, because we have 30 volts DC on all these XLR connectors, it's important to take that DC off before you plug any connector into another piece of audio equipment. I discovered to my chagrin early on that there was a particular input on my AFEX 120A that didn't have capacitors on it. And I plugged in there and lots of smoke came out. And that was the end of the AFEX because the little transformer that was on the input was just melted. So I built a box with 18 wirings like this. So it goes from a ground and a balanced line to a ground and a balanced line with 2 capacitors on it. Then I also built an audio only box, which has the intercom coming in on one side through transformers into 2 balanced lines coming out, and then 3 balanced lines for channels 13, 14, 15 if I wanted to feed program into those. This was the PC board that I made, which had all the little capacitors, the little round ones are capacitors, and then the strange shape at the bottom are the barrier strips where they connected into. And when it was all wired, it was like this. So basically, I had all of the non-comm audio ran through those capacitors. So even if it was certainly a program in and out from the AFEX audio devices or any program in out that was showing up on the patch bay, I ran it through a capacitor, so I was sure there's no DC on it. Now, just to review, in an RTS belt pack, it runs on a regular XLR. Pin 2 is channel A, and pin 3 is channel B. And normally you need to have power on pin 2 to power the belt pack, but you don't need to have power on pin 3, not necessary. And both of these 2 channels are terminated in 200 ohms to keep the level right, because it's designed that way. We went over that in part 1. Now, so once you have this in this belt pack, this BP325, on the bottom of the belt pack, you've got a place to plug in a single ear mono headset plus a 2-ear stereo headset. And those can be wired to operate together or separately. This can be wired so I get 2 different bits of audio out of it, and this can be wired so I get only one of the 2 out of it. So I have done shows where I plug 2 headsets into one belt pack, and it worked fine. Now the audio line that comes in, normally the output of every intercom power supply that's made by any company is a male XLR, and that's done to prevent you from plugging in a microphone into it and frying your microphone. So the male XLR goes out to the field and plugs into the line input of your belt pack. If you wanted to loop to another belt pack, you could plug into this male XLR here and loop around into the second belt pack. But you can also wire this male connector to be a program audio in. You have to use probably a turnaround to make it a female, which is the normal audio in. But when it's a program audio in, this program volume control on the bottom of the belt pack then becomes your volume for program in the belt pack. So you can have 2 channels of audio, and on the back of the belt pack, a program level. And that's typically mostly used, let's say, for your prompter operator. Prompter operator may have a headset with the director and a script person on 2 different channels, plus their program volume, so they can hear the show and run their prompter.
Pete, I don't recall that this was mentioned on the first one, but do you know the answer as to why RTS and Clear-Com headset connectors are different genders? And how that can drive you crazy sometimes in the field?
No, what's the answer?
I don't know.
I think the reason is Clear-Com normally has female connectors on their headsets, and RTS normally has male connectors on their headsets. I think the first connector to come to exist was the 5-pin female connector on the piece of equipment, which are the cameras. And so original cameras all had early cameras had the two phone plug, the binary phone plugs, but they also evolved into the 5-pin female headset. So RTS, being part of the TV business, kept the 5-pin female on their belt pack.
Actually, Pete, because Clear-Com came out of rock and roll and concerts and then theater, when Bob Cohen originally designed the belt pack, there were several reasons that he went with the male on the belt pack. One of them is that the female has got a locking mechanism, whether it's on a chassis or not, and if there is a possibility that will break. So he would rather have the connector on the end of a cable for the headset give you problems rather than have the connector in the belt pack break and give you problems.
On this belt pack, this little gray button here is a button that pushes the locking mechanism on the female to release it. And I have seen this break, and therefore you can't unplug from it. Whereas the locking mechanism on a female cable connector, that's the actual locking. This button here, this gray one, is pressing the locking mechanism on the side of this female. Whereas if you have an actual female, you are pressing the locking mechanism. So it's a much more reliable way of unplugging it.
Yeah. Two other reasons were that number one, the female connector, chassis connector, was physically larger, and the male was smaller, which was convenient. And last, there's a rumor that the male was cheaper, so that's why Bob wanted it in the belt pack. Bob
because he didn't actually make the headsets; he bought the headsets from somebody else.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Definitely true. James Henry, or Brew as we call him, says gain structure. Absolutely. You're a monitor engineer, and the key is to keep everyone in the same gain place, not just looking at signal presence lights or that endpoints are online. Yeah, gain is a sort of a strange thing. You know, like I said before, during rehearsals, everybody's a little more relaxed. You know, they're not talking very loud. The stage manager out on the stage is talking normal voice, you know. And as soon as the show starts, now they're all talking like this, and they can't hear a thing they're saying. So you always have to change their gain to make it work. John Christie asked, who did you have make that CCI 22 breakout panel? I made it. The actual panel was made by a Whirlwind, I think, with the engraving on it. But I made the PC board, all of these components on that thing, from the connector to these two switches to the there's a 9-pin connector on the back, which mates with the 9-pin connector on the back of the CCI 22, and there's also a 2-pin connector which goes to the patch bay. So yeah, I had it made, and I think I'm pretty sure Whirlwind made me the panel. Stan wants to know, can you change the powered channel to be internally in the belt? Can you change the powered channel to be internally in the belt pack? Well, you can't.
Does he mean locally power the belt pack?
Yes, you can do locally powered on the belt pack. There is a one of these over on the left hand side of the belt pack. Better to show this one right here. There is a 3-pin jack right here where it says intercom loop, and right below it it says remote mic switch local power, right below it to the left here. So if I were to take the male connector, which is unused, and move it down to this plugged in, I could then plug a 30-volt power supply into there. However, it's still going to be, the powered channel still is pin 2 as far as audio coming into the belt pack. You can't power the belt pack from pin 3 unless you change this jack. So here's your, there's the intercom loop, which has pin 1 and pin 2 on it. So you'd have to rewire that intercom loop to get pin 3 to be the power. But The solution is, if you're doing a real system, is every channel has power. Doesn't hurt the bell pack if you run power into the bell pack on pin 3 in addition to power on pin 2. So when I make this system, to avoid having to think, oh, what channel has power on it? What do I put on channel 1? What do I put on channel 2? I just make every channel have power. Then I can put it anywhere I want. One bell pack can have powered channel on 1 and the other bell pack can have the powered channel on 2. But in reality, the bell pack is always being powered by pin 2. Bob did answer the question about the headset gender. There's several different options there. And Kevin Parrish says it's all a conspiracy. Of course, it's a conspiracy. Who wants to do their bell pack the same as another company? So yes, Dan, no power on the B channel. You can have power on it. Doesn't hurt the bell pack, but you won't gain anything from it. So you can take a channel that has power on it, put it into the B channel on one bell pack and into the A channel on another bell pack, which then it's used for. So now the dial-up. Now everything I tell you from this point on, you have to swear never to tell anybody else because this is very secret. The dial-up works like this. On the front of the dial-up, I'm going to show you a close-up of this. Here's a close-up of the dial-up. It has thumb wheel switches, and these thumb wheel switches go from 0 to 15. And this first section is called cameras, and then we have outputs over here. So here's channel 1, and here's channel 2. Now that channel 1 is channel 1 of the bell pack, or pin 2. This channel 2 is channel 2 of the bell pack, or pin 3. So when I plug a bell pack into the back of this rack here, let's say I plug a bell pack into circuit 1 right here, Comm channel 15 is feeding circuit 1. And below it, Comm channel 2 is feeding channel 2. So if you look at this diagram here, above it, this first one here has a dial-up of 1 on the channel 1 and 6 on the channel 2. So that's basically cameras over stage manager. And typically on a paperwork you'll get from the TD, this bell pack has to be a 1/6, for instance, or this bell pack has to be a 1/2, or this bell pack has to be a 5/6. Well, that relates to the Comm channels that will usually be listed at the top of that tech sheet. So here's our channel 1, and these dotted lines are the 6 channels that are feeding to all the thumb wheel switches. And then this solid line is the output of that switch going to pin 2, and this is channel 2, the output of this switch going to pin 3. Now the confusing part about dial-ups is you've got channel 1, channel 2, dial-up output 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, channels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 12. So I have all these numbers and they all go crazy in your head. And my wish would be if they would have labeled the device output A, B, C. Then you have, you dial up 1/6 on channel A. Why not? It would make it a little clearer, but they have not thought to honor my comments, which I sent many emails about this to the companies, but that's okay. So that's what a dial-up is. This allows you to take your 15 channels of your comm system and assign it arbitrarily to lots of different bell pack lines. And because in this system design, every channel has power, it doesn't matter which ones you put on channel 1 because they all have power. Dave Node says, why don't intercom manufacturers build off-the-shelf devices to provide all of these dry ins and outs so every comm rack doesn't have to have homemade something in it? Well, I've paid them not to make those adapters so I can make them. I don't know, because, they do have adapters. They all make, Clear-Com and RTS do make devices to do these dry ins and outs. but not the whole system. So if when I wanted to dry out all of them to have available on my patch bay, I had to basically wire the output of the 862 box, which makes dry outputs, and feed it not only into my SAP 1626, but into my patch bay to get all of those dry feeds.
Putting on my manufacturer's hat,
Yep.
when I was working at Clear-Com and RTS, one of the problems as a manufacturer, let's say we've got that hybrid and you make a box that's got 2 of them. But Pete, you need a box that's got 16 of them. And you can't make like 5 or 6 different versions of it. And the guy that only needs 2 channels isn't going to want to pay for 16. And the guy that needs 16 isn't going to want to deal with 8 diddly little boxes. So it's difficult for manufacturers.
You can't make a box for everybody, but this is their attempt to make a box for people who wanted a simple dial-up versus the 15-channel dial-up. This is a 6-channel dial-up. So here we've got a box. It has on the back of it, it has 12 male outputs. Remember, the male output is what goes to your belt pack, and it has 3 female inputs. So you have a channel 1, 2, channel 3, 4, channel 5, 6 on the back here. Now, because they thought somebody who couldn't afford to have a big giant dial-up probably would only buy 1 power supply, probably a PS20, which has basically 1 powered channel and 1 unpowered channel. So that you plug that 1 powered channel into the plug that says 1, 2. Now your powered channel is on pin 1. And then, so every single dial-up here, if I go to the next drawing, every dial-up, here's output 1 and channels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's channel A and here's channel B for that output. So because I'm using a single channel power supply, all my outputs have to have the first dial-up on 1 to get power to the belt pack, or they won't be powered. And because there's no power supply on the other outputs of this dial-up, here on the back of the source assign panel are 5 push buttons, which will allow you to turn on a termination on channels 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those 6 channels which don't have a power supply on them are properly terminated and won't go into horrendous feedback. So this is the ability to do that. Now, I've done dial-ups with 6 channels. My preference is to plug in power supplies to power up every single channel, so I don't have to worry about what goes on 1. You know, because sometimes I don't want to put 1 on it. I might want to have, 5/6.
A problem that people should just be aware of is this idea of terminations or boxes that have switchable terminations can really get you into trouble, because if for some reason a channel's unterminated, the gain structure just goes crazy. It's loud and distorted. On the other hand, if you've got several of these things and you double or triple or quadruple terminate a channel, the gain on that channel goes drastically down. So it can be very confusing in a larger system, particularly one where you're bringing in all sorts of different equipment. You have to make sure that there's only 1 termination on each channel. Otherwise, that can get you into trouble.
Yeah, it's very obvious when there's no termination on a channel because it goes into feedback instantly. It's not so obvious if you have a double termination because it's only 6 dB down. But definitely you want to make sure, and it's more evident in Clear-Com systems, because if you have multiple power supplies on the system for whatever reason, more power, or that's just the units we have, you want to make sure that only 1 termination per channel is turned on those power supplies. Mark Kennedy says, so to make microphones adjustable using a console, you take the Comm's audio dry and input to a console, and then take the console back out into the system. Yes, that's exactly what they did. Now, in Mac's case, they were using a digital intercom system, so they were dealing with 4-wire. So we only had the control the one, this in a 4-wire, you have two cables, one audio going this way, one audio going this way. He only wanted to adjust the audio coming out of their panel, so we did that.
When we talk about 2-wire, 4-wire is a really easy way to deal with audio, whether it be sound systems or communication. But 2-wire is actually complicated, and it was originally started by the telephone company years ago. But if you stop and think about it, it's a single wire, a single path that you're both talking on and listening from simultaneously. And that, if you think about it, that's not a very easy thing to do. And you're going to get into that more detail, I think, Pete, right?
Yeah. Now, Michael says that you'd think that someone would have added LEDs to these panels. Well, when these panels were originally first built, there were no LEDs. LEDs did not exist. They were all little incandescent bulbs inside. So they evolved into them, and some new equipment does have LEDs to at least indicate power that's going there. James Burke says PS20 has 2 powered channels. That's the current PS20. I think the original, which was also the original small power supply, I thought it was called a PS20, only had 1 powered and 1 terminated channel. But even so, if you used a modern PS20, only 2 of your channels you plugged in here would be powered, and that would help. Or you take 3 PS20s and plug them in there, and therefore everything is powered, just the way it makes it easier. So when a hybrid, this is a hybrid. Now, what a hybrid does, 2 to 4 wire converter. So the hybrids were originally invented in the beginning of the telephone age. To get audio from a telephone call across the country, they had to split it into sending audio and receiving audio, because an amplifier only amplifies in one direction. And so they send a audio signal across the country, east to west, and every 1,000 miles they have to put an amplifier in because it's too quiet. And then the reverse happens with the audio coming back. So when you get it to the other end, you have to get into your telephone. Well, a telephone only has 2 wires, ground and hot. That's all it goes into your telephone. The hot has DC on it, so it powers the carbon mic headset in your telephone. I'm not talking about cell phones. This is, old dial-up telephones. So they had to have a hybrid, and the hybrid takes that 2-way audio, and here the 2-way audio is represented on the right-hand side of the drawing. Here's a 4-wire audio output with audio coming out, and here's a 4-wire audio input with audio coming in. Now, if I take these 2 amplifiers, it's basically an amplifier going out, that's an amplifier coming in, and I connect the 2 of them together. Here I have the audio from the input, and it is going into my 2-wire intercom connection. Fine, doing great. But it's also going into the output. So I'm getting basically feedback. And here's my 2-wire audio, which in a 2-wire system, the audio channel is basically a mix bus. All of the XLR, all of the belt packs on the line are all connected to the same channel, and their audio is going into that channel, and their audio is listening from that channel. So it's all on 1 wire. It's a mix bus. So here's your audio coming in, going both directions, and the audio comes from the 2-wire, and it goes over here to the output, and so my audio is coming out. Well, to fix this problem, there's a series of components in the middle that takes audio from the input and mixes it in out of phase with the audio that's looped through. And the null controls are usually fairly complicated because you have to adjust for different factors in the line, resistance, capacitance, and inductance. So any one of those items will cause the audio to change. And until you null out and remove each of those factors, you will get audio coming in here. Now, in a typical hybrid, here's a hybrid right here, this one right here. Resistance, inductance, and capacitance are the three knobs that you null. And in this particular unit, you plug a headset into the front panel and listen, and you press the null test, and it puts a boop, 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 boop line. And 9 times out of 10, you're doing this test when people are actually on the comm system, and nobody ever gets it. They always say, there's some kind of noise on my channel. What's going on? And you just have to let them listen. So you're hearing boop, boop, boop. And as you adjust the RLC, that noise will go away. And you can see what happens here in the hybrid. Here's the test beep on the bottom, and here's the headphone to listen for the test beep. So my test beep is going through here, it's running around, it's coming back in, and before I adjust this, I hear full volume, boop, 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 boop. And then when I adjust the null controls, capacitance, inductance, and resistance, eventually it goes away. And often you have to go through these controls 2 or 3 times, listening until it goes away. Now, most of the time, you can make it almost totally disappear. I never have found a hybrid which could totally make it disappear. And as a result, if I had multiple hybrids on the same 2-wire connection, like 2 or 3 different hybrids going to 2 or 3 different 4-wire connections, eventually the system is going to get unstable, and I'm going to have ringing and noise on it because I can't really null out all of those lines.
Another factor in this is that the nulling adjustments are definitely dependent upon those 3 characteristics of the 2-wire line. And let's just speak about impedance. So you get a really perfect null at the beginning of your setup, and you're really happy, and there are 10 belt packs on that channel, and then before the show starts, you've added another 10 belt packs, which has changed the impedance of the 2-wire line, and your null no longer is good.
That being said, you should null every morning when you come into your show, because if anything's changed on it, a belt pack's added, a belt pack's taken off, an extra 100-foot cable is put in the line, whatever, it's going to change your null. And I usually try to get in 30 minutes before call time to turn on my comm system and go through all the nulls without annoying people with the boop, 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 and get the nulls fixed, because it can change. And when you don't have a proper null in your digital intercom system, the one that's connected to the 4-wire on the side here, you will, every time you talk to this channel, you will hear yourself come back, and people say, my side tone is too loud. I can hear myself too much. I turn my side tone down and it doesn't go away. Well, it's not really side tone. It's you're basically listening to the speaker on an amplifier on the other side. Dave Node says, is there power on channels 1, 3, and 5 with this app? Can RTS belt pack takes power only on pin 3 instead of pin 2? They only take power on pin 2, just like Clear-Com belt packs only take power on pin 2. So the odd channels don't necessarily have to have power on them, but when I'm dialing up those 6 channels here, I'm dialing up those 6 channels. Let's say I plugged in a power supply, an early version of the PS20, which didn't have power on pin 2. On the first one here, 1 and 2, 1 would be powered, 2 wouldn't. 3 would be powered, 4 wouldn't. 5 would be powered, 6 wouldn't. So I would always have to make sure that the first dial-up knob of this SAP was on one of the powered channels, 1, 3, or 5. To avoid that worry about what is on, I like to power both pins. So I power 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6. So everything in there is powered. Um, Derek says, you had mentioned Tuesday about avoiding having a power on large quantity of bell packs to avoid overloading a channel. When you have a large system, like with my 15 channel, do you try to eliminate the power on the production channel? Yes, it's not necessary. Usually production is the most common channel throughout a whole intercom system. So I would always put the production channel on channel 2 of the bell packs, because it's going to the bell pack that doesn't require power, which isn't to say I don't power the production channel, because I might want to just put a bell pack out with production only on it, and that would go on pin 1. So yes, the rule of thumb, one of the rules of thumb of doing wired comms is put your most common channel, your largest used channel, on the unpowered pin of your belt packs. So pin 2. That way, pin 1, which might be, let's say, stage manager or audio A2, which might only have 2 or 3 bell packs on it. That's actually what's coming from the power supply. Right. Oh, Gary points out the PS15 had just 1 powered channel. That's what it was. The PS20, which is the current power supply, is 2 channels. I don't know how you would actually notice that you accidentally had an extra termination on a line. Like I say, if you had 2 terminations on, it's only 6 dB down. That might be enough to notice. I don't know, but just it's one of those things you just have to physically check on your power supply and make sure they're all right. Palmer Jenkins says, null test jacks. Are these standard size TRS headphone jacks, or are they tip sleeve? I was having trouble getting some standard cheap stereo earbuds to work on that jack a while back. This null test jack on this right here, I have never used that little 1/8" plug on this unit. I've always used a regular intercom headset because that's what I have. I don't know what the deal is with this jack. I don't have an answer for your question. Now, that being said, now that we're on this slide, this is what's called the TW12C if it's sold by Clear-Com, and if it's sold by RTS, it's called the TW12B. And what it is 2 hybrid 2 to 4 wire converters back to back with the 4 wire section in the middle connected by transformers. So you basically have a comm system, a wet comm system connected on this side, and a different wet comm system on this side. It could be RTS, Clear-Com, 2 Clear-Coms, 2 RTSs, whatever. It could 2 different systems, and you're converting those 2 wire wet comm into 4 wire, and you're connecting them together through transformers, which are isolating the grounds between the 2 sides. So here on this unit, you plug in the comm system, and notice there's no power plugs on this unit at all. There's no power connection at all, because you plug in the comm system, and this half of the TW12C is powered by the comm system that you plugged in on this side. And the reason for doing that is, if you powered it separately with no comm system plugged in here, it would go into feedback because you'd have no null. But by powering the electronics on this side from the comm system that you're using, which if you have power, if you have your terminations set right, it will be terminated and you won't have feedback. So this is terminated by this power system, this comm system, and this one's terminated by this comm system. So then you have to use this null test button. There's one for either side to null the hybrid going to this system, and then do null the hybrid going to this system, and they're two separate things. You hear through the same headset jack, but you can only null one at a time. And you'll see this little power light on. That indicates that you've actually plugged it into a comm system and you have actual connection to a comm system. So down the switches you have are Clear-Com or RTS, and that's mostly a level changing control because Clear-Com is 10 dB less than RTS. And then when you're in the RTS mode, button to the right, you can select the input to this hybrid coming from either pin 2 or pin 3, channel 1 or channel 2. When you're in the Clear-Com mode on this side, it's always going to be pin 3 you're dealing with. The pin 2, 3 switch has nothing to do it. John Christie says, often he finds the line is too short to allow the null to properly access correct null setting. Yeah, if you plug a belt pack directly into your hybrid, the settings in those knobs, in those resistors that actually control the nulls, are optimized for a normal comm system, which might have a 50, 100 feet of cable on it. So it won't null very well if you have extremely short connections, and it won't null very well if you have extremely long connections either. Stan Hunter says, Bob, do you remember the first TW used for IBM in Florida?
I vaguely do. And wasn't there something that we gave you a prototype on? This was many years ago, and of course my memory is failing. And you didn't give it back to us?
Was this the TW, the Clear-Com TW? Probably. Yes. Yeah. Clear-Com, years after they started, came out with a model belt pack called TW, which is basically like an RTS belt pack. But they also came out with belt packs that were compatible either for RTS or Clear-Com, and it had a switch on it to switch the level control, so you could use the belt pack either way.
I don't recall which it was with Mr. Hunter there, but I have a vague of it.
A. Michael says, it's a great tip to more use channel unpowered pin 2, less connected panel to pin 1. Definitely. You don't want to overload your power supply. My practice with multiple termination switch, Mark Kennedy is saying, switch all but one off. Base station is the only one terminated to start. Well, that's definitely true. Although I don't know any, even in Clear-Com, in their master stations, if they don't have a power supply in them, they don't have a termination switch. Is that right, Bob?
I believe that's right.
If it's just a 4-channel station,
right.
It doesn't have a termination in it.
I think that's right, Pete. Because they're always designed to be used with the power supply.
Yeah. John Center says, regarding mic audio levels in headsets for comm systems, and this may be even more of an issue when events and shows resume after the shutdown, many Broadway stage managers prefer to use their own headsets, and we're recommending that, of course. Not always the same model for their entire department. The mic levels in the headsets can be different and impact the audio level from that stage manager. Sometimes that can be an issue when the different stage managers rotate their jobs calling Broadway shows. On some productions, there might be a tag team stage manager, one calling Act 1, another calling Act 2. Now, this is more controllable if they're on a digital master station, which a lot of Broadway shows use digital systems like Riedel and mostly Riedel for pre-production and rehearsals. But once they get into the run of the show, they switch over to something less expensive, like Clear-Com or RTS two-wire systems. And those don't have a very easy way to adjust just a level. So how you deal with the levels between the two different stage managers is something you have to do on a show by show basis, to see what the deal is. Stan says it was the first prototype and he's never giving it back. He didn't actually.
Well, do you know, I no longer care, Stan.
Exactly. So the TW12 is something that you'll run into a lot, particularly you go into any stadium and they've got a Clear-Com system up on their catwalks for the follow spots, and more often than not they'll have a TW12 there. So when your show come in with your own comm system, you can plug in and they'll tune this up so you can connect to theirs, and theirs can be powered by theirs power supply, and you're powered by your power supply. My usual way of dealing with is asking them to please disconnect your power supply and let me power everything from my system, because it's much cleaner than trying to use a hybrid in there. And nobody's ever refused that, but you never know. But it's always a great device to have in your back pocket. You should always have one or two of these on site with you when you're interfacing, for that exact reason. Now, here's another way you can be used. A hybrid can be used, a standalone hybrid, not the TW12. Here's an example of Intercom System 2, which has a Clear-Com power supply and a passive splitter and a couple of belt packs, and it's feeding a hybrid. And the hybrid is splitting it into a 4-wire in and a 4-wire out, which then is connected over satellite or audio or some way to another location, the out going to the in going to the out. And here it's coming out and going into a splitter box for an RTS power supply with a bunch of RTS belt packs. So if you have audio cables in your facility that run from one theater to the other, this is a smarter way of interconnecting your comm, particularly if they're two different intercom systems, two different kinds of intercom systems. And this pair of hybrids up here is an example of what's built into the TW12, but it's missing the ISO transformers on there. So in the hybrid, usually there would be transformers built onto each side here. So the isolation would be normal on that. Here's another example of a place where none of the departments in this show get along with each other. They all hate each other. They all bring their own intercom systems. There's no job for the comm guy to do except for these TW12s in the middle here. So this is the only thing the comm guy gets to do. Lighting brought an RTS system. They got it all built into their follow spots or whatever. Stage managers have their own systems to run the stage here. Audio has its own system up here. So we've got audio connecting to a TW12 going into a channel of the C channel of the Clear-Com MS440 4-channel master power supply, which is the calling stage manager unit. And then we've done the same thing with another TW12 from the RTS system lighting channel going into the A channel, and then the stage managers are on the B channel. So here's just another example of using that. Bruce says reusing 4-wire to link intercom systems, great. Means you can then just use any audio format you want to link your systems. Oh yeah, doesn't that just audio is audio? You can run AES, MADI, satellite, RF. Just if you can send audio, it doesn't have to be 2-wire audio.
Oh,
Go ahead.
just a comment that may not be obvious. On the RTS 2-channel equipment, one of the advantages of the dial-up also is you can dial up a belt pack channel, well, a belt pack output to like be a channel 2, or a channel 1, channel 1.
Yeah.
So no matter where the operator switches to channel 2 or channel 1 on his belt pack, he's still getting the same person, which could, you know.
Yeah, I will on a wet system follow spots if I'm using RTS and I don't have the single channel RTS belt pack, which they also make. I will dial it up spots over spots. So no matter what button they push, they get it. On a digital system, if I'm, let's say, running a digital belt pack, I might do the same thing, but I also might make the second channel an ISO channel for the spots, so they can talk amongst themselves. Marshall Woodwall says, can the TW12 be set to provide just a dry out? No, it is not built that way. I have seen people that have modified them and brought out the outputs of each of the 2 4-wires and put a switch to connect them together so they can use them as 2 hybrids, but it's not built that way. There are standalone hybrids made by Clear-Com and by RTS that you can use. This is a standalone hybrid from Studio Technologies, and if you see, it has 2 4-wire inputs, channel 1, channel 2 in, and channel 1, channel 2 out. And then it has the wet 2-wire PL here with a duplicate of that connection as a wet 2-wire connection on the front panel. So this one is unique in that it has a computer inside to do the nulling. So you press this auto null button, and if you're listening, it steps through 3 different or 4 different frequency bands and adjusts it for each of those frequency bands for null. And you'll hear the noise come, and you'll see on the volume on the meters, the level gets less and less and less and less and less. And then it does channel 2. The meter does less and less and less and less. So this works well. It does come in a version that has 2 units in 1 rack. One thing to be careful about this unit here, not this particular one, but the model, the earlier model. I think this is basically basically 2 of these in 1 rack. And this one may have that problem in that the same computer is used to do the null for both sides. And when that happens, pin 1 of the 2-wire on both sides are connected together, right? So basically, we've got an interconnection between the 2 sides. And if you're interfacing an RTS system on this side and a Clear-Com system on this side, you may get hum because you're tying the grounds of the 2 systems together. And in that case, you might want to use a second unit to do your RTS connections and this unit to do your Clear-Com connections. That's pretty much it. There's not much more to say. And this dial-up, which I just described here, one I built 2. One of them still exists, I think, with Claire Brothers in their Nashville office. The other one slowly died of rental needs. Dave Node says, have you used the AudioMan ISO boxes? Yes, definitely. We talked about that in version 1. AudioMan ISO boxes basically split each of the two channels and isolates them with transformers. And it's a terrific box to use with a BTR if you're connecting a BTR into a system, because the BTR doesn't require power in. All it needs is your audio connection in. And as long as you have your audio connection, that's all it counts. Often when you plug in a BTR into the local power inside the theater and then run a line out to your TV truck outside, different power sources, you're going to get terrible buzz on the system, and an AudioMan ISO box will totally eliminate that buzz. Now, to a lesser extent, in a worst case, if you had to use it, an AudioMan ISO box can connect two intercom systems together, but it's not very it isn't very successful. It will do it. You will get audio back and forth, but you'll also get a sort of a slapback, or you'll get extra side tone in the line from the other system. So there's no isolation of the audio between the two systems. So no control. So it's not really a replacement for the TW12. See if I missed any questions here. I think I pretty much got them all. Yep. So anybody, Bob, do you have anything you want to add beyond this?
No, I don't think so. Just my narcissistic personality says, gee, I wonder if anybody know that the letters best audio actually stand for people. And the best audio, the letters stand for the people that put it together, which is the B is David Brand, E is Estrin, both Larry Estrin and Bob Estrin, S is Norm Schwartz, and the T in best audio is Bob Tourkow. And I'm very proud of that.
And now the E stands for Erskine too. So there we go. Brand, Erskine, Estrin, audio, Norm, and Tourkow. There we go. Now, unfortunately, everybody, you see this address for Bob down here, Bob at kusi.net. He needs to have a lot of email sent to him telling him to get back into the intercom business. Stop retiring.
No. I'm too old. I can't. And I'm 76 years old. To which all of you can reply, "Gee, you don't look 76, Bob." But I can't imagine going up ladders and scaffolding and running around stadiums. On the other hand, boy, I get so envious when I see the digital intercoms and the digital wireless, the capabilities that exist now in communication compared to when I quit about 15 years ago is just astonishing. And
well, I want to let you know that the new abilities with the digital intercoms totally eliminate the need to go up and down ladders. So you that is piece of cake. You don't have to go up and down ladders at all. So it's an old man's business. You know, I'm 72, so I can't believe in 3 years I'm going to quit intercom. Never.
Well, Peter, we can talk offline. Fly me over, hire me for a job.
Hire me.
I too.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to join this. It's
Sure.
been a lot of fun.
I had planned to do a 5-part series of Keep Comm with Pete, and this is part 2. Part 3 probably will be a digital intercom, and I hope at that point to have a readal system and an RTS system together in the same place to demo their capabilities. And part 4 would be about wireless intercom. Plan to have a free speak and a Bolero system together in the same place to demo them. And part 5 is so you want to have intercom on your telephone. Plan to have a Unity intercom and a VCOM system and an Agent IC, or Agent 99 as we call it, together to demo them all. Now, our immediate show schedule is coming up this next Saturday. We have a 3 series shows, which are actually the same show every single time, Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday. And they are presented by the Orange Jackets Olympic Ceremony Stage Manager Master Class. And it's all about doing comm for massive Olympic events, where you're a stage manager for 20,000 people all at the same time, you have to rehearse, teach how to do the show, everything. And
is the first one of that a repeat of the earlier one that I attended?
All 3 of them are the same. They're the same. They're all repeats of the one that we did before for free. These are charged at $15 each to come to it. Sam Hunter and Julia Whittle are going to do the 3 live shows again. So obviously the only difference will be questions from you, the listener. So definitely please join us. And
it was astonishing. I have to tell you, as many of those things as I've done, I learned things about this, particularly about what goes on in terms of rehearsals and such. I found it absolutely fascinating with beautiful videos. Yeah.
Well, it's not your typical stage manager show, particularly because you almost 99% of your cast are volunteers. So first of all, you have to deal with them that way. You can't ask somebody to come every single night for rehearsal. So there's massive scheduling and planning to get everybody to your shows. But then also, when we're doing the actual, I speak a little tiny bit about the comm system that's used there. But to do that with the comm system, it had something like 150 panels and more belt packs than that, and wireless intercom and everything. So it's a massive comm system, which I will describe slightly, but Julia and Sam will talk about even more, because that's their finger on the pulse of the show. So it's definitely a way to go. And thank you very much, everybody, for listening on this part 2, making 2-wire comms useful. And we'll talk to you later about when the next versions come along. Thanks a lot, Bob.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Bye-bye.